Hi everyone, welcome back to Read with Bree. I know it's been a long time since I've uploaded and I deeply apologize. I've had a few life updates. I've moved back to Washington DC, as you can tell, new apartment, new bookshelf. And yeah, things have been great. I've been reading a lot of incredible books and I'm so excited to tell you about them. Today I want to talk about A New Wilderness by Diane Cook, which is shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize last year. And I've been wanting to read this book for a while. I don't mean to sound hyperbolic, but A New Wilderness is probably my new favorite book and one of the best books I have ever read in my life. It has everything that I would want to read in a book right now. It's dystopian, it's speculative fiction. It deals with the onslaught of climate change. I'm really excited to tell you about it. I know it sounds hyperbolic, but you're in for a treat. In a not so distant future, Beatrice and her family, made of Agnes and Glenn, they are living in a world in which there's just unbelievable climate change. People live in these metropolis towns that are just overridden with crime and pollution and violence. And so they joined this study to live out in a new wilderness in the woods. It was a study that was pioneered by the government, and it put together 20 odd people called the community to live and to forage on the land. Now, it becomes really unclear what the study exactly is for, but the wilderness is a non-forgiving place. People from the community of these 20 people die constantly, from crossing rivers to possibly a broken leg, dehydration. You would wonder while reading this, why have they joined this study? Why are they out in the woods living as hunter-gatherers and foragers? Well, the pollution from the cities have made it unbearable to live in. And so Beatrice makes a decision because Agnes, her daughter, her child, is dying from the inability to breathe. She's slowly being poisoned by the air. And so Beatrice with Glenn decide to go on this study. They're in this desolate land, doing everything, hunting, gathering, needing to understand and read the signs from nature. Along the way, they're greeted by rangers who ask them how many people are still alive, inform them there are all these rules that they cannot stay in one place for too long and to have their human imprint on the land for too long. So they're kind of moved along. But then you see that these rangers are quite callous about the whole situation and regard death kind of in this laissez-faire way. But you're really intrigued, what is this study for, and how does one become a ranger, and how come the rangers are living so cushily in these log cabins while the community has to hunt, to gather, to lose loved ones, to deal with grief and loss. So it's a really interesting book because it's survivalist and seems very, very real in terms of our climate change issues right now. But there are three themes that I find really, really interesting in this book. Number one is the issue of kinship. So Beatrice is living in the woods with these 20 members, and she brought her daughter Agnes, who is basically being raised in the woods, raised in the wild. And she came around age 5, 6. And the way that she's adapted to understanding and reading and listening to animals, to deer and wolves, etc., kind of freaks Beatrice out. And so there's a really interesting question about kinship and what does it mean to be a mother and your child be such a foreign, almost different species to you. And so their relationship between Beatrice and Agnes is absolutely fascinating and really pulls on my heartstrings. There's also glimpses and flashbacks in which Beatrice is making this decision. And Agnes's grandmother, Beatrice's mother, fights with Beatrice. And so you have all this intergenerational struggle of how one should raise the child in the face of climate change. That becomes a really interesting question to grapple with. The other theme is, of course, climate change and the Anthropocene. Here we have this society that's completely destroyed the environment and trying to make sense of reconnecting with the natural world, how disconnected we are from the land, for the community to struggle so much. And thirdly, my last question is, where the hell is the state? Because throughout this whole book, you know that this is a government study, but what is this government study for? And who is the state? Who has been making these decisions to lead for complete climate change destruction that has only allowed some parts of the United States to be environmentally safe? And what are the laws that have kept this territory, quote unquote, pristine? One of my favorite anthropological texts called Maddening by Aretxaga, I will link it in the bio, talks about how the state is really hard to identify and to communicate with. But there are masks of the ghost of the state that you might see as police officers or soldiers, or like people who are extensions of the state and the power of the state. So we don't know who's making the decisions about the study and what the government is now going to do with all of this pristine wilderness land. But you have these rangers who, even though this community is living in the woods, these 20 members, they're still governed by laws. They're still told by rangers, you can't stay here for too long, or you have to meet us at the caldera, which may take 5 weeks to get to, or 5 months, while the rangers can kind of ride on their horses and get to the spot. Just kept making me think about what exactly is the purpose of government, especially during crisis, and who's benefiting from government decisions. So it's a really cool book. The ending is so beautiful and so feminist and just so I don't want to give it away, but I really love this book, and I think it does a really good job of thinking about the role of government in the face of adversity and whether or not the government is really your friend, because the study goes south at the end and you're just like, what was the point? So highly recommend A New Wilderness. As I said, it was nominated for, or shortlisted for, the Man Booker, and completely makes sense why. The writing is captivating. The images are just the descriptions of nature. I also really appreciated at the end of the book, there was a section right next to the acknowledgements that Diane Cook talks about land rights and, land acknowledgement, because she was really inspired by the Pacific Northwest and lists many of the indigenous communities who've inhabited that land. And that recognition was really wonderful, even though this is a speculative book, and even though those communities were not necessarily discussed in the book, she still recognized the communities that inspired her in terms of thinking about the natural world. So highly recommend reading this book. Let me know what you think in the comments, if you've read it, if you feel inspired to read it, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Until then, keep on reading.